My name is Gladys Whitmore. 72 years on his back. Many of them spent cooking for those who never came back to dinner. I've been a widow for almost a decade. But I learned early on that true loneliness begins well before grief. And today I ask you, with all the calmness of someone who has seen the world turn 1,000 times, have you ever been called a burden? Who did you carry in your arms? If this has already hurt you, then you will understand how. Because the story I'm going to tell you begins with a phrase said at a Sunday lunch. With folded napkins and rehearsed smiles, you're going to love the new nursing home. Ha! Mom. And it ends with my silence turning into disappearance. Maybe you felt this kind of lump in your throat too. That moment when you realize that they no longer see you as a person, but as a problem. I felt it a lot. I didn't yell. No, I didn't argue. I just watched. And I waited. One down. Today, one ibabag, weanda so primo. I'm going to show you how far an injured, but lucid woman can go when she decides she's no longer disposable. Because they thought I would. But I was the one who left them behind. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. That night, while they toasted with expensive wine, thinking they had silenced me forever, I was already far away. The tranquilizer they put in my tea, they threw it away. The bags they packed for me, I didn't even open it. What they called care was actually a planned exile. They wanted to admit me and forget that I existed. But at dawn, the room was empty, and with me, the idea of being obedient also disappeared. I didn't run away. I carried out what I prepared in silence. What they don't know is that when an old woman disappears, the world that thought she controlled her begins to crumble. Why, if you've been with me this far, Martin Wesh Shikam, if something in your chest tightened with what you heard, I humbly ask you, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. It's not just for me. It is for all of us who have been called exaggerated, forgotten, or outdated. Wow. Your support shows me that I'm not alone to tell this. And maybe you're not alone to listen either. My home in Charleston has always been my pride. The white wooden balcony, the blue shutters I painted with Arthur before he fell ill, the camellia garden that blooms without fail every spring. Everything there carries my story, my sweat, my love. To this day, I keep every corner as it should be. I wax the floor with my own hands. I do the market every Wednesday at the Meeting Street Market. And I never miss chamomile tea in the cupboard. I like the silence of the house, but also the sound of the wind passing through the windows. Solitude, when it is chosen, is very different from the one imposed on us. But in recent months, this silence has begun to be visited. Charles, my eldest son, reappeared after almost 6 months without giving any news. He arrived saying that he wanted to talk about the future. He brought a leather briefcase, looked around as if evaluating a property for sale. He said it was just careful. Worry. But his eyes stopped too much on the papers on the desk. On the bookshelf where I keep documents, on the safe built into the old panel in the room. We need to organize things. Mom, Social Security, health plans, deed. All of this is important, Mom. I nodded, poured tea, smiled, looked on. But inside, my body stiffened as if sensing what was coming. The following week, it was Leo's turn to appear. Unlike his brother, he is more direct, more impulsive. Well, how? He said that the house was too big for me, that he was concerned about my well-being, and that it would be safer for me to move to a simpler place. Maybe something with internal stairs. Or, better yet, no stairs. She often repeated, well, we just want to see you well, Mom, in a place where you can age with dignity. Dignity. They love that word. They throw it over the lowest intentions, as if it were perfume disguising mold. And then came Penelope, Moam, always very sweet, always with gifts, thought with affection, a thermal blanket that I have never used, a scent diffuser that gave me a headache, and praise, lots of praise. Oh, Gladys, this armchair is so vintage. This cabinet has so much value. Sentimental, wild to see. Of course. He spoke as if he had already seen all that out of place, and I was there, looking, listening. Kawan, what did I tell until the Aksutia, and so the most the legion, registering, wonderbar, Sirkasatradist. I remember one afternoon in particular, Rob, anti-style. I was watering my camellias when Charles showed up unannounced. He said he wanted to have a coffee with his mother. I sat with him in the kitchen. The same one where I cooked for my children for almost 30 years. He started a conversation about accounts. Or the lawyers do well, out of it accounts and a to account. Said he could help me with passwords, that it was important to make everything accessible. He asked where my papers from the house were. The will, insurance. It was then that I realized they were not worried about me. They were worried about what would become of me. I kept quiet, but something inside me started to move, as if my heart, which for so long was their home, began to lock its doors. The other day, already alone, I went to clean the guest room. And while I was changing the sheets, I found something that shouldn't be there. A crumpled paper, now thrown into the bathroom basket. I took it by instinct. It was a printed budget for a nursing home in Savannah. At the top, blue, in large letters, and large letters, was my full name, Gladys Ruth Whitmore, Noka, and in unsteady said, my date of birth, my age, a handwritten note with blue pen, Makinchano, sit your tot, to Kapdakiste, has good mobility, private room. My body froze. At the time, everything fell into place. The strange visits, the conversations disguised as care, the sudden interest in documents. That was not a suggestion. It was planning on. At that moment, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the window. The afternoon was beautiful. The sun was beating sideways on the waxed floor, and even with so much pain going through me inside, I just took a deep breath, because if there's one thing that old age has taught me, time reveals everything. And I, Liam, who have never been one to scream, discovered the value of looking. Pause. Lorna, pause. No, there are things that we feel before we even understand. That tightness in the chest when someone says it's for your good. But behind the eyes there is no love. There is calculation. If you've ever felt this coming from those who should protect you, comment here. Even if it's just a "I've lived it," or "it's true." Sometimes, just knowing that someone understands, we breathe better. That night, I left the paper on the kitchen table, on a cartonage I neatly folded. Now, I made sure they saw it. And when Charles came back the following weekend, I noticed that the paper was gone. He did not comment at all. Nah, we'll do this on. Me neither. But that day, I didn't prepare any more cake, not even coffee. Gradually, wow, why not sit here? But I took the photos from the shelf, storing documents in a new envelope, rearranging the vault. Nodded it down. Now Kasoka. I didn't know yet what I was going to do, but he knew what he wouldn't do. Trust. What my children didn't realize is that while they thought they beat me with fake tenderness, I was already leaving, not with suitcases, but with silence. And so it was, on any given Sunday, between a forced visit and an iced tea, that everything began to change. They thought they had cornered me, but they were about to see that the woman they called fragile was strong enough to disappear and take with her much more than they imagined. The invitation arrived by text message. Special lunch at Mount Pleasant. Just the four of us. We pick you up at 11 a.m. It's going to be beautiful. Mom, I read those words calmly, but my stomach turned. It was all rehearsed. The chosen restaurant was by the sea, overlooking the boats and waiters in thin ties. We arrived with clear skies, but my chest carried clouds. Penelope greeted me with a cold kiss on the cheek and the same blue dress I gave her for Christmas 2011. The embroidered detail on the sleeve was torn, patched with white thread. That wasn't affection. It was artifice. Leo opened the chair for me. Charles ordered wine. Hey, and dissolved. Everything rehearsed. Even too much. The waiter took the orders, and the conversation started lightly, as if they were really a family that cared. They complimented my hair, asked about the column, which was so good column, laughed at old stories, but the eyes, the eyes. The eyes were just waiting for the right time to kill me slowly. And the time has come for the main course. Charles cleared his throat, holding the cup, now, and said, Mom, we've been talking a lot about your well-being, you know? And we found a wonderful place, with painting classes, water aerobics, a beautiful view, and security. Leo then entered. all rehearsed. You're going to have everything. Mom, fresh food, medical care, company, better than being alone here. And what a cow. Penelope smiled like a soap opera actress. And you know who's there? Cousin Judith. She loved it. I listened to everything in silence, cutting the fish that had already cooled on the plate. My fork trembled slightly, but my voice did not. And when would that change be? I asked. Charles didn't hesitate. Well, tomorrow morning. Well, everything is ready. All that's left is for you to know. That was not an invitation. It was a sentence. They gathered me there as if it were a party, but they had already signed everything. I was no longer heard. No, too. I was transported. Oh, reallocated. No, Pitchananadiwa, on the Steindeyes. Committed. Hand in hand. They called it love. But that was discard. I finished cutting the fish, pushed the plate slowly. My eyes turned to the sea, but my mind was racing. It wasn't just lunch that was prepared. It was the whole trap, and I, in the role of a doll who should smile and accept. But something inside me broke on that table, a part that I still hoped was a mistake, that it was an exaggeration in my head. Disappeared. They didn't notice. They continued talking about the details of that house, the schedules, the professional care. They even laughed, toasting to the new phase of my life. I laughed, as if they were promoting me to something noble. And you wanted out what a caught to sell, which we just next to car. But I only thought about the camellia in my garden, the dishes I wasn't going to wash anymore, the smell of the old wood in my house, a house that they planned to empty without consulting me. Penelope touched my hand at the end of the dessert and said, "Why, a possibly so wouldn't say. You'll understand. Wow, Gladys, it's for your good." And that's when I knew my story with them had changed gender. It was no longer drama. It was suspense. They didn't see it, but I saw it. I saw the anxious hands on the napkin, the eyes calculating time, the car that would take me the next day, the suitcases that were probably already in the trunk. I got up from the table elegantly. No, I thanked him for lunch. He smiles, as if accepting fate. But inside, something had already turned a key, because what died at that lunch was not only my confidence, it was the illusion that I still had children. Now, tell me, what does a woman do when she realizes that she's treated like an old-fashioned piece of furniture? Because that night, I didn't sleep. I planned. I returned home in the back seat of Charles' car, with Penelope by my side. With Penelope by my all smiles. In the trunk, the suitcase she prepared herself, with clothes that never fit me, shoes I didn't choose, and a toiletry bag with that moisturizer that gives me allergies. Everything carefully arranged for my new life, as she called it. When we entered the house, the porch light was still on. The white camellia, my favorite, was toppled by the afternoon wind. In the living room, they settled me on the couch, as if I were a tired child from school. Penelope brought a glass of water and 2 small pills, saying it was just to help you sleep better. Mom, 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 tomorrow will be a day of great emotion. I took the glass with both hands, held the pills on my tongue, and pretended to swallow. Smile, Beatrice, mighty song, thanked, and while she was talking to Leo on the phone, I went to the sink, spit the pills on a napkin, and crumpled them inside the sleeve of my pajamas. The house was different. In the hallway, lights are on too much, locked windows, the safe in the room slightly out of place. They had messed with my things. I went to the room without saying anything. I closed the door slowly and locked it. I sat on the edge of the bed, with the lamp on your and stayed there, hearing name. The wall clock read 10. Shina will system that has said on 10. 40s. Kai, but now some illusion wild, and a bedstone to death. The ticking felt like a drum. My feet touched the floor, and I remembered how many nights those same feet walked around the house, helping a child cry. Wild. Outside, there's air sounded, preparing a bottle. Leo, going from the living room to the bathroom with a towel in hand, giving medicine at dawn. Now, wow, I heard their footsteps. Leo's voice, muffled by the hallway. Yes, early tomorrow. Everything's signed. She won't even know what happened. In the afternoon, we can go to the registry office. Charles, more restrained, answered something about the value of the house. The broker estimated it high. But if we push the sale fast, it comes out in up to 30 days. And Penelope, laughing in the background, won't it so? The lawyer said he can get a quick report. Mild disability. No one questions an elderly woman locked in rest. I closed my eyes for a moment, but it wasn't sadness. It was clarity. I never imagined hearing this from the mouth of those I carried on my lap. But there, locked in my own room, I realized that I was not trapped. I was awake. I got up slowly, put on my most discreet outfit, dark pants, linen blouse, soft sneakers, and opened the safe with the code they thought I had already forgotten. I took the envelope with the important documents, the deed to the Seabrook Shores house, my second will, the investment dossier that I kept away from their eyes. In a small box, there were my oldest jewels, not for the value, but for the story. The ring Arthur gave me when I quit my job to raise Charles, my mother's earrings, and the brooch I wore to my father's funeral. I kept everything in the black leather bag, the one they never thought was pretty enough to compliment. My suitcase had been packed for days. I knew that moment would come. I didn't know when, but I knew. I took the coat, looked one last time in the mirror, and I saw myself. Not how they saw me, but as I was, whole. The dawn was progressing. In the hallway, silence returned. I waited until the clock struck 4 a.m. I opened the door slowly, walked to the kitchen, left the empty tea mug on the table, along with a leaf torn from the recipe book. In it, well, I wrote only one sentence. I am not what you say, and you are not who I created. I left through the back door. I closed it carefully. The street was deserted, the sky gray, but I was going strong. At every step, he left behind not only the house, but also the woman who waited for consideration. And now, tell me, what makes a mother disappear from her own home without looking back? The answer, me, comes at the next sunrise. I arrived in Seabrook Shores before the sun even rose. The wind from the coast seemed to recognize me from afar, as if to say, "One, one." It took a while, and two, but it came back. The station was empty. The driver who picked me up didn't even ask my name. He just followed the address written on an old piece of paper, yellowed by time. When we went down in front of the entrance of palm trees, I felt like I was inside a memory. That small house, with white wood and green windows, was exactly as I left it last time. As invisible as I've become in recent years, she was my secret, my only piece of the world that no one ever knew existed. I bought that land 30 years ago, after Arthur died. I did it in my maiden name. I never told Charles, nor Leo, much less Penelope, Nirvana, Mopowand to Kisinstros. It wasn't a plan. It was an intuition. Something told me that one day I would need to have a place to reappear, alone and in peace. When I opened the door, the smell of old wood invaded me. There was dust, of course, but there was also coziness. And at the back of the room, by the kitchen window, she was there. Eliza, older, and so, say where she at. I don't know. Gray hair, tied in a bun, cotton apron. She looked at me, opened her arms, and said, you. I knew you would come back one day. Eliza worked with me for almost 20 years. She was more than a housekeeper. She was a witness. She watched as Charles began to change his voice. When Leo stopped calling me on birthdays, she listened, now quietly, to the times I cried after Penelope hung up the phone without saying, "Thank you." And when I asked her to take care of this house from a distance, she didn't ask questions. I just said, "Yes, ma'am." Now, there in front of me, he served me a warm coffee with a tear in his eyes. "Everything is where you left it," she said. "Oh, now, Docom. The documents, the safe, noun, the international account, even the monthly statements arrived correctly. It's all saved." I opened the small drawer in the cabinet, and there it was, the revised will, on letterhead, stamped, with the signatures of 2 witnesses. The same document I left prepared in 2017 when Charles tried to convince me to sell half of the Charleston house. He thought I forgot, but I just changed the direction. At the back of the master bedroom, Eliza showed the built-in panel where the second safe was. There were copies of deeds, bank papers with international stamps, receipts for transfers in the name of companies registered in Delaware and Nassau. Yes, I was a literature teacher. But I learned to read balance sheets as easily as I read poetry. While they thought I collected recipes, I collected protection clauses. It was in that house that the pain began to give way. It still hurt. Not abandonment, but the realization that all that was already inside them had been a long time ago. I insisted on not seeing. The small living room table became my headquarters. Noun. With a cup of tea in one hand, pen in the other. Noun. I began to organize. I listed the names of lawyers, the access to funds, the blocking orders. I prepared letters. I reviewed passwords, and one by one, the memories were transformed into a strategy. Eliza looked on with reverence. They thought you were fragile, noun, but you were just quiet. I smiled. Oh, you know, sometimes we are so silent for so long that people mistake our silence for weakness. But it is not weakness. It is fertile soil. It is that old woman learns to sow from the inside before reaping from the outside. And they look, lo, am here, opening my heart, telling my story. If you're there listening, can you do me a favor? Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you. And if my voice, even low, is reaching you, so it was worth coming back. Now, cow. The question I ask you is, what does a woman build when no one is looking? Because that's exactly what I did. And the next morning, they will find out. I spent 2 whole days sitting at that living room table, with the windows open and the sound of the waves in the background. Eliza brought me tea, cookies, and silence, the kind of silence she understands without asking. In front of me, piles of papers, wills, powers of attorney, sales contracts, bank statements of accounts that no one knew existed. Every signature, one. Every stamp, every comma. It was like a stepping stone back to my dignity. The landline phone in the house was still working. I dialed a number I hadn't used in almost a year. George Cromwell answered on the 3rd call. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, surprised. I heard that you were hospitalized. I smiled with my eyes. No, George, they tried, but they forgot that I have old friends and a good memory. He didn't need anything else. We spent hours on the call. I faxed copies, encrypted emails. George confirmed. The powers of attorney that Charles and Leo presented to the bank were forged. The signatures were scanned from an old form. The clauses of the will had been tampered with by a lawyer who was now under investigation. We can reverse everything, George said, but it needs to be fast. And it was. Over the next few days, Eliza and I organized the legal return of my assets to myself. The original will, which benefited my grandchildren, came back into force. The accounts in my name have been reactivated. Charles' accesses were removed, and as icing on the cake, I included a new clause. Anyone who tried to declare me incapable or to intern me against my will would be automatically excluded from the inheritance. But it wasn't just about money. No more. Lillian. While going through the old files, I found a brown notebook with the handwritten label, Hope Center Initial Project. I opened it and saw the doodles I started doing back in 2009. After visiting a friend in a horrible nursing home in Savannah, here was the outline of what an institution for women like me would be. Women who were mothers, wives, caregivers, and who, after decades of giving their all, were discarded. I wanted a real home, with garden, with library, with the smell of cake in the hallway, and people who call by name, not by room number. I closed the notebook tightly. It was no longer a dream. Now it would be an act. I said to Eliza, let's start near the. She didn't understand at first, but when I showed her name on the cover, she held my hand. No. Do you really want to do that? I replied. I'm not saying I can't. Rabble, I said I don't want to. I need to. George called a team. Architect, one accountant, social project consultant, all reliable, all discreet. Some were even thrilled with the idea. And there I am, back to the position I know best, that of teacher. Only this time, no, teaching the world to respect those who age. Meanwhile, I continued to organize my retaliation. I went through the audio files I'd recorded over the years, conversations with Charles, meetings with Leo, even calls with Penelope. I knew that one day I would need to prove what I felt, and there was. For example, I insisted a persona con tapaka, Charles' voice saying, she doesn't even remember the passwords anymore. When it leaves, it's all ours. The sentence came with the date, the time, and his breath between the words. These recordings did not go to the police. They went to the Hope Center safe, a kind of memorial of the broken silence. Gradually, what was pain became a project. What was anger became a cause. Because I understood that my fight was not only mine, it was of all the women who grow old, invisible, who are interrupted in the middle of the sentence, discredited when they forget a date, treated like crazy when they say I do remember. Charles wanted a house without me, so I created a home for many of me. And you know what's more powerful than inheritance? Legacy? Wow. And that's how the woman they wanted to lock up. He began to build the place from which no one else will be expelled. But what did the children do when they found out that the missing mother was founding something that could change everything? The living room of my home in Charleston was filled with voices that once brought me joy. Now they echoed like sharp daggers. But no, I wasn't there. Not physically. Wow. In fact, I watched it all on a cell phone screen. Sitting on the Seabrook balcony, with the sea in the background, and a blanket over my legs. Eliza, note, always discreet, had installed those cameras years ago, after a series of break-ins in the neighborhood. At the time, it was for safety. Today, it was for justice. George Cromwell held the phone firmly. The image was clear. Wow. Charles, in the center of the room, Leo next to me. Penelope sprawled on my couch, and, to my bitter surprise, Tobias, my older brother, with the same dry gaze he always carried. Well, guys, Charles began, raising his glass of red wine. I think today is a day of change, of relief. Everyone laughed. Leo opened the briefcase with papers. Here are the authorizations, with the power of attorney that we presented. The bank has already released part of the funds. The rest is a matter of time. Penelope, fiddling with her cell phone. And I murmured, "Oh, I see. I've already separated the jewelry into 3 lots. I kept the pins. Leo got the necklaces. The rings. We sell." My stomach turned. It wasn't the gold. It was their memory treating my past as rubble. Tobias, with that air of someone who could never stand the fact that I had a better life than his, blurted out, "Hush, no, Diane. What about her? Are you still resisting, or have you accepted that she has lost her mind?" Charles replied, laughing, "You're doped in a nursing home in Colombia. Room shared with 3 old ladies drooling. It will take a while for her to understand that it is definitive." I didn't cry. I didn't even tremble. I just took a deep breath because, at that moment, what hurt me was not the betrayal. It was the total absence of memory. They talked about me as if I had already died, and as if I had never existed. George paused the video. He looked at me with the eyes of someone who felt for me, but knew I could handle it. "Do you want to continue?" I nodded. "I want to see everything." The image returned. The lawyer? No. And Cecile. One Evans said, "With this documentation, you can move the deed in 2 days." I've already spoken to the registry office. The issue of interdiction is just a formality. Penelope interrupted. "And the will? Is the old one still in the system?" Leo replied, "We have already taken care of that. The new one is already signed. We are unique heirs." No. It was at that moment that the camera picked up something that made me squeeze the arm of the chair hard. Charles turned to the painting on the wall. My painting. The watercolor of the house in which I was born. He looked at it and said, "We can sell that, too. It must be worth about 2,000. There, in that sentence, it was as if my story had been valued at a liquidation price. And if you've made it this far, I beg you, stay with me until the end, because what's to come is the part that even I didn't imagine I would have the courage to live. And look, that's when the pain seems unbearable, that we find a strength that we didn't know we had. I turned my eyes to the sea. Eliza arrived with a clean blanket. Do you want to stop? He asked. I shook my head. I'm just getting started. Because rock bottom is not when you are betrayed. It's when you watch. Live on. The people you created erasing you from history. But do you know what they forgot? It's just that even the echo carries a voice, and mine was about to be heard in a way they would never forget. It was exactly 10 o'clock in the morning when the doorbell of my house rang. The house they thought was already theirs. Charles must have been in the makeshift office he set up in my room. Leo probably leafed through the papers they printed in such a hurry. And Penelope. Right. Penelope was certainly deciding which of my dresses would fit best on some new hanger. What they didn't expect was to see me standing, at the door, lying, just in her decision, in black, no tremors, no cane. Without asking permission, Eliza was next to me. With her firm bun and the serene look of someone who knows exactly why she is there. Behind us, George Cromwell. How ein underdid him tell us how to see. Elegant as ever, count, with the brown briefcase that contained much more than papers. Penelope opened the door with the automatic smile of someone who was waiting for a delivery. But the delivery was me. When he saw me, the color came off his face like a pulled sheet. Charles emerged from the room, his eyes wide, and Leo, from the back, dropped a glass on the floor. Tobias took a second longer to speak, but stood up slowly, with that air of this must be a misunderstanding. Good morning, I said. Mom, I heard that you were about to decide my fate. I thought it was fair to participate. Entered, Sigatotto, without being invited. No, because that was still, and always would be, my home. I sat at the head of the table, as if returning to the throne that should never have been touched. I folded my hands on the table and stared at each of them. Charles cleared his throat. Then I swore, but his voice didn't come out. Leo tried to smile, but his lips trembled. Penelope stood behind the chair, like a statue badly positioned. Bring the papers, I asked. Cromwell took a series of envelopes from his briefcase. He placed them one by one on the table. Here are Mrs. Whitmore's recent medical reports, issued by 3 different professionals. All attest to total lucidity, full autonomy, and unquestionable sanity. He paused. And here, the records that the documents presented by you in recent weeks were falsified or obtained by dubious means. Charles stood up. This is absurd. She's being manipulated. George only replied, the recordings. Mr. Wow. Charles. And then, in a gesture I had been waiting for months, Cromwell placed a small tape recorder on the table. Then she's defo. He pressed the button. She doesn't even remember the passwords anymore. When it leaves, it's all ours. Charles, voice, white, raw. Good now. Penelope took 2 steps back. Leo muttered, "Well, that's illegal." "Come," George retorted. "Well, it's permissible now." And it was delivered directly to the judge responsible for the interdiction action. The silence in the room weighed more than any sentence. That's when I said, "Oh, lo, I steadfast. You erased me without me having left. They buried me alive inside an institution. They called me incapable, but I was just silent. Handigal, sobbed. I looked into their eyes. I saw fear. It's a kind of regret that you don't ask for, you just carry. No. There is a type of betrayal that we don't see coming, and another that we see, but pretend it's not real. The worst pain is not when they forget you. That's when they do it by looking you in the eye. If you've ever felt this, even if only for a moment, comment here. It says I understand you, or I know how it is. Because, sometimes just knowing that someone has been through this, the heart can take it a little longer. Charles tried to say something, but his voice became small. Tobias said nothing more, and Penelope, well. Penelope left the room without saying a word. The woman they wanted to silence, it was there, in flesh, voice, and justice. But what they didn't know yet, it was what I had in store for them. And when I show, then yes, everything would really change. George pressed the button once more. Once more. The room, which minutes before had been brimming with arrogance, now breathed tension. Leo's voice came first, in a shallow, almost bored tone. After she's hospitalized, we will solve it now. Divide everything without stress. Soon after, Penelope's muffled laughter. She won't even remember how I had been you Akbar. We say it's for her good, and that's it. And then, the final blow. Char's voice. She doesn't even know where she keeps things anymore. Just sign, sell, and forget. The silence that took over the room was different from all the previous ones. It was no longer the silence of waiting. It was that of despair about to explode. Evans, the lawyer, stepped forward. Trying to sound firm. These recordings can be interpreted out of context. With the elegance that only he has, replied, tops, yeah, yes, the context. Let's then go to the legal context of the signatures that appear here. He took another document from his briefcase and read, "Powers of attorney obtained through coercion. Signatures with a retroactive date. Attempts at undue interdiction. All documented. It's already with the Charleston court. Charles, pale, Candice leaned back in his chair. What am I on? Penelope clutched her phone in her hands, as if the glass could protect her. Leo didn't blink, and Tobias stood up as if trying to escape from a sinking boat. But before I could leave, I spoke in a calm voice. You signed too. He froze. I pointed to the copy of the document on the table. He recognized the signature as a witness. He validated a lie. You may have hated me all my life for being younger, for having studied, Neil, for having married well, but that doesn't give you the right to bury me alive. Tobias did not answer. He sat down again. It was then that Eliza, with her usual calmness, approached and delivered the last letter. Why, a simple sheet folded into 3 parts. I placed it on the table. Here is the new version of the will. Official Ireland till gold count. Registered now. And this time, no room for those who call me incapable. Charles shifted in his chair. Mother, he began, his voice breaking. Oh, everything we did was thinking about your good. I stared at him, but he said nothing, because certain answers are not given with words. They surrender with deeds. I opened the second folder, with the Hope Center logo in relief. I pulled out 3 stapled sheets, handed one to each. They looked at it without understanding. Starting next week, you will have the chance to do something worthwhile. The Hope Center needs helpers, and not talking about donations or beautiful positions. I'm talking about work, real work, gardening, laundry, maintenance, once a week, for a year. As volunteers, Penelope gave a dry laugh. Is this punishment? No. Oh. I replied. It's an opportunity. You spent so much time trying to get something out of me. Who have forgotten what it is to give? Charles tried to counter. You want to humiliate us? I sighed. I know dear no can't you? No. You have already taken care of this part yourself. They don't understand it yet, but they would soon discover what it means to dig one's own grave with gardening gloves. And when they took the hoe, maybe for the first time in my life, they would feel the real weight of what it means to have roots. But what happened when the local media found out about all this? Because, that was also about to happen. I went back to Seabrook like someone who goes back to his own name. The sea breeze smelled of a new beginning, and the white gate of the house was no longer a hiding place, but an official entrance, because now it would all really begin. The Hope Center was no longer a notebook. Desire, no, and whisper. It was reality. Registered. Signed. No Diddy. Documented. Cromwell took care of every detail with the precision that only the good know. The property was officially donated to the foundation. In my name, New Cow. Yes, but not as an inheritance, as a choice. Everything they wanted to take was transferred, not to them, but to a legacy that they can never touch. The funds They came from the accounts that opened the eyes of many greedy executives. Investments in sustainable bonds, rental properties in discrete areas, silent actions of companies that respected me. None of that was born of a stroke of luck. Everything was built over time, and with the same patience that I used to raise 3 children who forgot their mother, even before their bodies cooled down. That week, the Charleston Registry Office received a new tax address record. Hope Center for Women, founder, Mary Seyland Apshamalesh Gladys Whitmore, Lee. Cromwell sent it on letterhead, and I personally went to sign it. The guy at the counter smiled when he saw my name. Are you really the lady in the article in the local newspaper? I smiled back. It depends on the subject, I replied, because yes, it was already starting to come out. Penelope posted old photos on Facebook. Me, holding her birthday cake, with the caption, "Wow, the longing for those we love is the cruelest." Charles, more calculating, hired a new lawyer. He sent a summons. Rejected. No. Leo. This was the one he wrote the most. Long messages, full of excuses. Mom. I made a mistake. We were lost. You can still forgive us. I didn't answer. Not out of anger, but because the time has come when the most dignified response is silence. I canceled all access, cards, bills, authorizations, powers of attorney torn up, debts, bank accesses revoked, safes locked with a new password. Everything that was a bond turned into legal dust. And, no, more importantly, emotional dust. Because for the first time, my last years belong to no one. They are no one's continuation, nor extension of past sacrifices. They are mine. And now I walk around the Hope Center in the morning. Before the ladies arrive, I pass my hand over the freshly painted walls, the garden in formation, the rooms that will soon have laughter, embroidery and tea, and I am glad there was still time, because what they took me in love, I regained in purpose. And look, if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Because sometimes a story told with the right heart can save another that hasn't even started yet. I don't hate my children, but I don't recognize them anymore either. What they destroyed, it's not what defines me. And what I built, it's what will survive me. But will they accept the end of the line so easily? Because there's something coming that even I was amazed when I found out. When the story came out in the local newspaper, with my black and white photo at the top and the headline in large letters, "Missing Elderly Woman Opens Home for Abandoned Women," I was sitting on the porch with my cup of lavender tea and my feet covered in a blanket Eliza made years ago. I read every word with the calm of someone who has waited a long time for this. Not for fame, but for truth. The news ran like fire and dry straw. Neighbors whispered on the sidewalks, and Charlotte's phone kept ringing Because, you see, they told one story, and now the world knew the other version, the real one. Also, on the Constitution, I yesterday there. Charles tried to react first. He sent a formal statement, signed by him and Penelope, saying that the family respects the matriarch's wishes, even if they disagree with certain methods used. It sounded false, even in the commas. Leo, Pan, Crown. Upon discovering that the Charleston house had been officially transferred to the foundation, had a panic attack. She called his lawyer 3 times and then disappeared from social networks. Penelope, Mayanan, Anonajam, always vain, lost her public relations job at Charles' family company. Official reason? Unnecessary brand exposure. No. Real reason? Scandal. Little guy. Grown-ups don't like confusion. What they lost, more an inheritance, was control of the narrative. They tried to make my silence a tomb, but my silence made headlines, and what was supposed to be oblivion became a living memory. Tobias then appeared with his last card. He filed a lawsuit alleging emotional fraud. He said that I had manipulated documents in a state of fragility, and that he, as a direct brother, should have the right to contest. At the preliminary hearing, he entered in a new suit and a rehearsed poor look. I didn't go. George went for me. He took the recordings, the messages. It is an opinion signed by 2 renowned psychiatrists. The judge, after listening to the material for 10 minutes, looked Tobias in the eye and said, "How? Why turn this? Being left out of a will is not illegal. It's just a consequence." And there, Leary, without having to raise my voice, without giving interviews, without writing a line, I won. I won. They began to destroy each other. Now, Charles blamed Penelope for the exposure. We didn't understand Dr. Wan. Penelope accused Leo of having been careless with the audios. Leo said that he was always manipulated by Charles. And Tobias disappeared. Now, and me? I continued, drinking my tea, strolling down the corridor of the Hope Center, watching the walls gain color and smell of cake in the late afternoon. Because sometimes the most elegant revenge, it is to let them devour themselves. And if you're thinking you've seen the peak of this story, hold on tight, because the most memorable moment is yet to come. The kind of thing that even changes the way you breathe. But can you imagine what happened? When did I last come back to Charleston? The visit took place on a warm breeze morning, with the smell of lily and fresh coffee spread through the corridors of the Hope Center. The reporter arrived punctually at 9, carrying a small pad and large, curious eyes. I must have been Penelope's age, maybe even a little younger, but the way she looked at me, as someone who sees history instead of person, made me feel at ease. Her name was Emily. She was from the Post and Courier, and she was very kind when she asked to see the place. He didn't come in a hurry, nor with invasive questions. It came with soul. We walked together through the freshly painted corridors, through the rooms still smelling of varnish and cornbread. Town. I showed the garden with the first hydrangeas sprouting, The library with books donated by other ladies who spent their lives reading novels and newspapers for breakfast. When we got to the balcony overlooking the sea, she sighed. You know, why so? Mrs. Non. Gladys, this here looks more like a sanctuary than a nursing home. Smile. On the end, why, maybe because most of the women who come here, he has spent his whole life trying to rest without permission. She asked me how it all started. I didn't give details. He didn't need to. But I dropped a few sentences that she jotted down in haste and reverence, things that came out of the heart, like someone who doesn't rehearse because he's already lived. I was not hospitalized. I was released. Then, when children call you a burden, how? It's time for you to learn to fly. And finally, I was an inheritance. Now, in a cause. I don't know at what point the tears flowed from her eyes, but I didn't apologize. Beautiful emotion does not fade. She shook my hand and said, "How? You just reminded me why I chose to tell stories." After she left, I sat right there on the balcony and stared at the sea. And it's curious how certain memories, even painful ones, become a place where we sit down to rest. Sometimes I think there are memories that mark us so much that it is imprinted even in the way we breathe. If you feel this on the other side too, if you have any memory that still lives with you as if it had just happened, share it with me in the comments. Tell me. It can be a phrase, a smell, a song. I like to know that I am not alone in this treasure chest of memories. 3 days later, the article was published. Big. Why? Beautiful title. Miss Gladys Whitmore. Own. Face. The woman who decided to be a lighthouse when they tried to turn out her light. It was as if the whole world had stopped to listen to me. Comments flooded the networks. People saying this woman is a heroine. Others telling similar stories. Ladies writing, asking for shelter. I received flowers, letters, phone calls. A lady from Knoxville sent a handmade blanket with a note. Your silence healed me. But what touched me the most? It arrived doubled, an envelope without a sender, with known handwriting. I made a mistake. I lost you. Is it still possible to visit? I folded the letter. I held it for a moment. I felt the roll as if it was the skin of history touching me again. Then I kept it in the drawer. How? No response. Because there is silence that speaks louder than any forgiveness, but does regret. At some point, learn to knock on the right door. The sky was clear that Sunday afternoon, as if even he knew something needed to be lit clearly. The Hope Center seemed to breathe. The open windows let the smell of lavender in, and the women who already occupied the rooms, each with her story shelved by time, smiled as if for the first time they saw their name written with dignity. The main hall was decorated with simplicity. There was no exaggeration, no ostentation, but there were fresh flowers, old photos of women's hands at work, washing clothes, embroidering blankets, writing letters, That was what I wanted to show. Not the paints themselves, but the hands that carried the world while no one else could see it. I went up on the small stage with a light blue ensemble that I kept in storage for years. It was the same one I wore at my grandson's christening, the last family event I waited for, an invitation that never came. Penelope thought I didn't match the pool photo, but that afternoon, oh yeah, that fabric covered more than my body. It covered the absence they imposed on me, with the presence that I myself recovered. Leon Ashia, the journalist who had written the story, was sitting in the front row. Cromwell, discreet as ever, watched alongside Eliza. And at the back of the room, almost leaning against the wall, as if afraid to touch their own past, were Charles, Leo, and Penelope. They were not invited, but they appeared anyway. They expected one, perhaps a speech of reconciliation, a gesture of repentance, a pat on the back that would wipe away the dirt with beautiful words. I grabbed the microphone with steady hands. I didn't tremble, because it wasn't anger that moved me. It was justice. Good afternoon, I began. Oh, the room fell silent. I wanted to thank every single woman here, not only because they are present today, but because they survive all the days that no one has seen. I paused. I looked around. This place was not born from an idea. He was born out of an absence, of a wound that was transformed into a path. I did not mention names. He didn't need to. For a long time, the women who built entire homes were forgotten. In the corner of the room, mothers who cooked dinner and wiped away their children's tears began to be treated as a nuisance, as an uncomfortable reminder that time passes for everyone. Some were taken to places without names, others for rooms with 3 beds and no windows. But they all had one thing in common: silence. A silence that screams. Emotion weighed in the air, but my voice was still firm. He didn't tremble. These hands that you see today, he said, raising mine, were the same ones that cared for, taught, loved, and then they were set aside. But today, they sign deeds. They write letters of welcome, and they build a new future. Soft applause arose here and there. Kept when I realized that my existence was more valuable without me. I understood that my value did not come from them. It came from me. The room exploded to its feet. Long, emotional, now true applause. I saw older women hugging each other. I saw young women crying discreetly. I saw people who never knew me, understanding me. And deep down, I saw Charles bow his head. Leo brought his hand to his face. Penelope bit her lips. They cried, "One, not me." Silent justice had been served me, and it wasn't just mine. It belonged to all of us. But what if, now, after all this, someone still thought they had the right to invade what no longer belongs to them? Because what was to come, it was not a request for forgiveness. It was a new attempt at control. and I was ready. That afternoon, the sky was copper-colored, and the wind shook the curtains as if telling old stories. I sat on my favorite porch with the blanket over my legs, and Eliza brought the chamomile tea with a touch of honey, as she always did on nights when my mother was still alive. The silence there was not absent. It was presence. It was as if everything had finally found its place. The view of the sea remained the same, but something inside me was different. Eliza sat next to me. Oh, he didn't say anything at first. He only looked at me with that silent respect of someone who knows every bit of my pain. They fell on their own. Mrs. Well, Gladys, you just stood up. I didn't answer. I just put my hand on hers, because I knew Charles was being investigated. Tax documents that he used from the old company, linked to the authorizations I revoked, were now in the hands of the Federal Revenue Service. I was not the one who denounced it. It was the system itself. When everything started to get out of control, and he tried to revert things that no longer belonged to him. Leo, after the audios were leaked, lost his job at the real estate agency. The manager said he could no longer associate the company's name with someone who conspired against his own mother. The words were harsh, but true, and he walked out the front door as if carrying an invisible coffin on his back. Penelope tried to keep her pose. She went to fashion shows, charity lunches, social events, but no one wanted to take a picture next to her. The social columns ignored her. What was once dazzle has become embarrassment. In 2 months, he lost all invitations. And me? I didn't do anything. Because sometimes justice comes like the tide. Wow. It enters quietly, but it takes everything that is not well established. That same week, I received a call from a Swiss bank. The voice on the other end was polite and precise. Mrs. Whitmore? Why, so bad. The last investment in your international portfolio has paid off beyond projections. The funds now amount to $1.7 million. Smile. I took a deep breath, and I replied with the calm of someone who already knows what he carries in his heart. Donate to the next home. In the name of my mother. Eliza looked at me in surprise, but said nothing. She understood. Why now? Because all that. It was always about her, too. About my mother. I didn't try to me. Another crown. About all the women who were invisible within their own families. And there, now, as the sun slowly fell over the ocean, my memories began to come back. I found myself young again, being ignored at family gatherings, interrupted in conversation, diminished when I had an opinion. I remembered the time an aunt called me a stubborn girl because I wanted to go to college, and the day I heard cousins say that an intelligent woman scares away a suitor. All my life I have been taught to shrink, to fit within the limits that others have drawn. But it was in this retreat that I learned to grow inside. Revenge, if you can call it that, was never made of hatred. It was made of reparation, to give back to myself what they took from me, little by little, the right to be whole. And now, It wasn't just the Hope Center that bore my name. It was the world. The world knew who I was. And, more importantly, who they were. But was the biggest shock yet to come? Because sometimes fate holds one last card. And when she falls on the table, why, when she falls on the table, no one expects what is about to happen. The hall was lit with low candles, and amber light reflected in the crystal bowls. Every detail of that night had been thought out by Cromwell, the Hope Center's donor appreciation dinner. Women with silver hair, sweet laughter, no, and eyes that knew too much were everywhere. It was as if time had decided to stop there, to honor all those who survived indifference without losing tenderness. I was called to the center of the room, amidst contained applause and looks that didn't ask me for anything. They only recognized me. I wore dark blue, the same shade as the night I chose to leave in silence. So many unknown faces, but at the same time, so familiar. I always superstand, because the pain of being left behind has a universal accent. And that night, she got a table set, no, fresh flowers and dignity. During dinner, a lady approached, hair tied in a loose bun, lead gray dress, trembling but firm hands. She held my hand and said in a choked voice, "My son did the same to me. He took me out of the house and put me in a place where I didn't even recognize the smell. But today, I am here because of you." I took a deep breath. I smiled with my eyes. And I replied quietly, "You've always been here. I just needed a key." More stories came, each one like a sigh that had been stuck for years. One said that her husband sold her house without warning. Another said that her grandson changed her name to that old woman. But there, Miss Nob Arnold wonders did you answer an old Katlam. That night, we all had names. Chair, Andimaya, Dino, Han, Kinokun Chair, Cup, No, Music, and Memory. It was in this atmosphere of reconciliation with life that I saw Charles. He entered from the side, without making a fuss. Tired look, dark suit, no tie. He was not invited, but she didn't need to say it. Her face already explained everything. He passed between the tables, hesitant, hushed, as if he no longer knows where he belongs. And maybe I really didn't know. He stopped next to me when the music stopped for a moment. I stared at him, but said nothing. He bent down a little, as he did when he was little and wanted to confess something. "Mom, I made a mistake." His voice was hoarse, broken. "I thought it was right. That was the best for you. But I got lost. I sold the car. In Ciro. Leo doesn't sleep anymore. Nah. Penelope doesn't leave the house. We destroyed itself." I was silent, not out of pride, but because silence sometimes protects the truth from being diminished by words. He continued, "Forgive me. I didn't know. Only then did I say, Charles, I created men, but you chose to become heirs." He wanted to hold my hand, and I backed off with delicacy, because it wasn't hate, it was clarity, the same one that led me to build all this with my feet on the ground. Why don't you also? And the heart on its feet. The music is back. An old waltz. One of the ladies at the Hope Center, one who always danced alone in the courtyard, called me with a shy look. I smiled, I stood up, and I accepted. We danced slowly. Not une, que like someone who starts over. And in that dance, I understood. The step can be slow, but when the soul is free, there is no age to turn destiny. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and sign up, and let's make this story reach those who need it. But does the past really accept being left behind? When does he knock on the door for the last time? It was one of those nights when sleep doesn't come, not because of insomnia, but because of too many memories. The kind of silence that speaks loudly, that pulls us by the hand back into our own soul. I grabbed my favorite pen, the one with navy blue ink, and sat down at the wooden desk I had brought from the Charleston house. I turned on the lamp with yellowish light, opened an envelope with no address, and I started. Well, dear Gladys, you still believe that love is enough. He still thinks that silence is proof of peace. It still confuses being strong with enduring everything in silence. But one day, you'll understand that love that hurts too much isn't a virtue, it's blindness. And that good people also need limits. You're going to break a little inside. Yes, but it will reconstruct each piece with more truth. With every word, I felt as if I was writing to a daughter I never had, even though the recipient was myself, the Gladys who said everything is fine when everything hurt. That gave spaces, voices, emotional heritages. Kept. You will love children who will forget the hugs they received, the sleepless nights, the notes at lunch. He will forgive more times than he should. You will confuse manipulation with worry. But don't blame yourself. Being good was never her mistake. The mistake was to think that kindness would protect you from ingratitude. A tear came down, not the kind of sobbing, but the one that comes down as an acknowledgement, a meek farewell to what never happened, but which still lives in a hidden corner of the heart. I paused for a second and thought, maybe, if someone had told me this before, I would have done it differently. But maybe, if I had done it differently, today I would not have built this home, this ground, that truth. And you know what? Life didn't break me. She exposed me. He showed me who really was who. She showed me what I was made of. And the most curious, it's just that in the end, I liked what I saw. Halfway through the letter, dark Faraday, what 2 chairs. I wrote, don't give up on yourself, even when others give up. One day, you will understand that silence is also a language, and that justice, when it arrives without noise, is the deepest of all. Time won't give you back what they took away, but it will show you that you never needed them to be whole. I kept the letter in a wooden box with a small, handwritten label. Wasir Cordero. For when I forget who I was. Not because I think ill forget, but because I like to know that, if one day the pain hides in me again, I will have a reminder that I was more than a survivor. I was a seed. Each woman who enters the Hope Center, each sheet changed, each cup washed, carries a little of my story. Ato, a part that was hurt, but not destroyed. No, we even flourish from abandonment when we water ourselves. And if you've made it this far with me, I want to tell you something from the bottom of my chest. The most remarkable moment of this story is yet to come, because time holds revelations that not even fate has the courage to anticipate. But am I ready for what still needs to be revealed? Because sometimes what we thought was the end, it is only the beginning of a new truth. It was March 16th, 73 years since my mother brought me into the world with trembling hands and hopeful eyes. Charleston was still a small town back then, and the house where I was born doesn't even exist anymore. It became a supermarket parking lot. But the memory is more persistent than any brick construction. That day, there was no party, not even balloons, nor gifts wrapped in red bows, just the smell of apple and cinnamon filling the kitchen air, as I had done since I learned to call my own. At the age of 14, I made the cake with calm hands. 2 green apples, a generous pinch of cinnamon, and a cup of sordade. I separated 2 dishes, as I always did when I was still waiting for visitors. One for me, and the other, for those who wanted to remember that I still existed. But the chair in front of it remained empty. Wow. It didn't hurt me. It didn't hurt me. Oh, I knew it. I knew they wouldn't come. And perhaps, for the first time, I understood that the true gift was this certainty. Because, you see, absence also responds. She screams without making a sound. And in that afternoon silence, with the sun reflecting on the embroidered towel that Eliza washed the day before, I smiled. I lit a candle. I didn't ask for anything impossible. I only wanted to continue in peace with my lucidity, with my courage, and with the little that was left. But that is all mine. I didn't sing happy birthday. I just closed my eyes and let the flame dance on its own, while I drank my tea slowly. And when night fell, the intercom rang. It was the delivery man. Wow. With a bouquet of white flowers, roses and lilies. Attached is a simple, handwritten note. Oh, you saved my mother. And thank you, Lucas. I don't know, Lucas, but I recognize your gratitude. I closed my eyes again. I felt something strange in my chest. It wasn't pain. It was closure. It was as if everything had finally made sense. And so I let the candle burn to the end. I didn't delete it. I didn't interrupt. Because there are things that deserve to live until their last breath. Like this story. like this love that wasn't lost, just transformed. But what if, just now, when everything seemed finished, a door is yet to open? That morning, oh, the sky was the same tone as the good memories, serene, without exaggeration, without promises. I woke up early, when, before the clatter of the pots in the kitchen of the Hope Center, I had go given on my. I see it was the of some work see and even before Eliza turned on the first lamp, I put on my light linen coat, let my hair down, something I almost never did in my life, and went down the sandy trail to the sea. The wind touched my face, as if recognizing an old friend. His feet, barefoot, low, sank slowly into the cold sand of Seabrook. I felt no fear, no hurry, no lack, only presence. I was there, and whole, for the first time in a long time. I no longer carried anyone's name but mine. Why? Neither the titles of mother, one nor the labels of widow, nor the expectations of others. It was just Gladys, the woman who fell, who broke in silence, and who chose not to scream. I stepped into the water slowly. It was cold, but I didn't cringe. Each wave that hit seemed to take away a guilt, a crossed sentence, a look that one day made me diminish. And there, Lord arms, on that stretch of sand where no one knew me, I recognized myself. And so Borsu Chocodeo. I remembered the girl who read hidden under the stairs, the girl who embroidered trousseau with her own hands, the woman who planted camellias, even though she knew they bloomed slowly. And I thought, maybe all this was really necessary, not for the suffering, but for the reunion. Mashikaos, time has taught me that the most powerful justice doesn't make noise. It doesn't come with revenge. It comes with peace. She doesn't fight back. She liberates. And, above all, she doesn't need an audience. There, up, without a watch, without a hurry, without anyone to impress. I knew I won, not because I proved something to anyone, but because I proved to myself that I was still capable of loving myself, even after I had been discarded. Wow. I'm not similar to skin under doorstep or stee. The silence around was not empty. It was sacred. Unsacred. It was as if the world had finally stopped to listen to me, not with ears, but with respect. I stopped walking and looked at the horizon. The line of the sea was so straight, so infinite, that for a moment I wondered if this was the beginning of something new. And maybe it was, because after a story like mine, what remains to be lived can surprise more than anything that has already happened. But, did fate still have one last answer? Or will I, before the end, still see what I never expected to find again? I returned home in the late afternoon, my feet still damp from the sand and my heart as light as the petals that swayed in the garden. The Hope Center was quiet, bathed in that shy golden of the sun that says goodbye with elegance. I helped Dona Mirtha choose flowers for the edge of the bed. She loves daisies. She says they are resistant and simple, like strong women. Later, wow, I prepared lavender tea with Donna Ruth, who was suffering from insomnia. She told a childhood memory while stirring the teapot. What? And I smiled. Well, because I realized that it was the same story I lived in another time, with another name, but the same flavor when the silence really came, not as a punishment, but as a rest. I sat down in the blue armchair on the balcony. I crossed my legs calmly and looked at the walls of that place that I had erected, not with cement, but with scars. Each painting, each curtain, each wooden bench carries a piece of the woman I was. And there, I whispered to myself, they gave me a destiny, but I chose a legacy, because at the end of the day, no one is just what they left her. We are what builds with what is left. And if you've made it this far with me, know that this story was also written for you. If one day you felt that you had no more place, if you were called a burden, an exaggeration, a burden, remember, those who have already supported a home will never be a nuisance. I was just in the wrong place. The biggest lesson that life gave me was to understand that forgiveness is not forgetting. It is to let go of what binds us inside. I don't carry any grudges. I carry memory, and she guides me, protects me. It strengthens me. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for having walked by my side here. Leah, you don't know how your listening honors me. If this story touched something inside, it leaves a like for me. It's like a tight hug, one of those who say I understand you without words. And if you want to come back when the coffee is hot again, subscribe to the channel. Here there will always be an empty chair waiting for you. Tell me in the comments where you watch me. I love imagining the open windows of these cities where other women, other hearts, are listening to me right now. And it activates the bell. Okay? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.